All right, everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Martin's World podcast. Before I get into introducing today's guest, I'd like to just remind you that if you want to support the show, support the fight for cannabis legalisation in Ireland, you can do so by signing up to the patreon.com/Martin's World, or you can also make a donation in the form of cryptocurrency through links found on the website martinsworld.ie. So today's guest then on the podcast is Lisa Quarrell from Kilbride, Scotland. Lisa joins me in the podcast to tell me about her journey going from being a cop in the UK to being an international drug smuggler, but not for the same reasons that most drug smugglers get into the game. Lisa became a smuggler of cannabis due to her son Cole, who at the age of 3 months old was diagnosed with drug-resistant epilepsy. Cole had tried 20 different anti-seizure medications and even tried brain surgery, but Cole's parents were then told that there was no safe option left for Cole. But as any parent would, Lisa refused to give up hope, and she came to learn about medical cannabis from parents of other kids with epilepsy who are successfully treating their seizures with cannabis-based medicines. Cole now is a private prescription for medical cannabis, so Lisa is able to retire from her life as being an international drug smuggler. But as the medicine is not available through the NHS, Lisa still has to pay up to £1,300 a month to fund Cole's medicine. So while she could retire from having to be a smuggler, she now finds herself having to be a full-time fundraising events manager. But it's great to see that there's so much support around Lisa from the community to help fund Cole's medicine. It's just a real pity that the same support, the same compassion isn't there from the policymakers who could support these patients by approving cannabis on the NHS for all the patients who need it, not just the patients with epilepsy, but the many different patients out there who use cannabis to help them attain a higher quality of life. So again, a big thanks to Lisa Quarrell, who joined me in the podcast and gave up her time. Lisa talks about in the podcast as well an upcoming election that's since come and gone, as this interview actually happened back in April before I had a bit of downtime due to my own health issues with epilepsy. But Lisa ran in that election. She came fourth in a 3-seat ward, so she just narrowly missed out on gaining a seat. So well done to Lisa on that attempt there. She says on a Facebook post herself, that the universe has other plans for her. And that it probably does, so onwards and upwards we go, Lisa. Thanks very much again for your time. And to everybody out there listening, I hope you enjoy this conversation. Lisa, thanks very much for joining me here this evening on the Martin's World podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. I've been reading many news articles with all sorts of different stories there with yourself, and I suppose there's kind of a span of maybe 3 years of articles that are up there. But for everybody out there who mightn't have heard you before, could you just tell us what's brought you into the campaign for cannabis?
My son, who is going to be 10 in July, Cole, was diagnosed at 3 months old with epilepsy. Within the first year, we were told that he was drug resistant. And after trying, at that point, I think we maybe tried 12 different anti-epileptic medicines. And they had failed. The only thing for Cole was surgery. He had surgery at 2.5, which was a lesionectomy in the left side of his temporal lobe, where part of his brain was removed, maybe about 2 centimetre cubed. We were told after that there was a good chance he would be seizure free. We had him seizure free for 6 months, and then unfortunately the seizures came back. Cole has drug resistant focal epilepsy, and we then tried from kind of year 3 and 4 all different medications. We even tried as many as 4 at the one time, and nothing seemed to give him any kind of break from his seizures other than maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Jeez.
And then
you say Cole is 9, so he would have been born about 2013-14, is that right?
2012.
2012.
It was July 2012, and he took his first seizure in my arms in October 2012. He had brain surgery when he was 2.5. It was November 2014 in Edinburgh Sick Kids. And then when he was 6 in 2018, his seizures got so bad they started affecting him physically. And at that point, the doctors told me that there was nothing left for Cole other than a second brain surgery, which they would have tried to go in and see if there was anything else they could remove, but the chances were really small. And what he would need to have was the left disconnected from the right side of his brain, which would have left Cole paralysed down one side and partially sighted for the rest of his life.
Jeez.
At that point, for me, you know, I had a wee boy that took seizures. He took up to 20 seizures a day, mainly through the night. He started taking them through the night and stopped taking them in the morning after wakening. So throughout the day, nobody seen the pain and the suffering that we had, because it was all through the night. He was, apart from having a slight development delay through learning, he was, you know, your typical 6-year-old boy. He rode a two-wheeler bike without stabilizers. He played football every Sunday. He was going to taekwondo. He was, you know, having a pretty full life. And at that point, when the doctor said, "That's it, we wanted to give him a second brain surgery," and I have to sign a form that says, "Yes, you can leave my son paralysed down one side and partially sighted for the rest of his life," I wasn't prepared to sign that form. So I took to social media, and I've always been quite active in social media about Cole from when he was a baby. You know, the stigma that surrounds epilepsy, especially in young males, is quite horrific. So I've always been quite open and quite public about Cole's journey. So I went back to social media and said, you know, can anybody suggest anything? And everything that came back was cannabis. And at that point, I was a police officer, which feels like a previous life, but I was a police officer from 2003 to 2013. I left when Cole was 1 year old. Yeah. And my mindset and beliefs about cannabis were very, very kind of stuck, and I always had tunnel vision. Mm-hmm. I believed what I was told, which was that it caused psychosis, that it was this demon drug that would make him withdrawn, paranoid, and lead on to other things. So when everyone suggested cannabis oil, I kept saying no. But the more people that said it to me, members of my own family were saying it, and I thought, you know, I'm going to need to research this.
It made you more and more curious.
Yeah, but it was more because, you know, I won't comment or say something unless I know enough about it. You know, I'm not somebody that sticks my opinions in unless I've got something to back it up with for anything. Yeah. And so for cannabis, even though I had strong opinions on it, I wanted to make sure that my opinions were right. And so I researched to prove myself right for when I went and commented back on social media. And, you know, weeks and weeks I researched, and there was nothing I could find that said anything negative about cannabis other than things that, you know, had a positive outcome for the pharmaceutical industry. I then, on my journeys, found other parents that were using cannabis oil for their children with epilepsy especially. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I found Mike Barnes, Professor Mike Barnes and Professor Purby, who were both doing a talk in Edinburgh, which is about 40 minutes from where I stay. I'm in Glasgow. And I went along and listened to them and realised that actually this probably could be the route that we needed for Cole. And that's where it began, really. That was my cannabis journey began, and that was October 2018 is when it began.
Perfect. And would I be right in saying, excuse me, that Vera Toomey, a local Cork woman, that's where I'm based here in Cork. She was a bit of an inspiration there at one point in time. You would have came across her in one of these online forums where parents of epilepsy patients would have been kind of communicating.
Was that Vera?
Vera Toomey, yeah.
Yeah. So Vera was actually a big kind of help on my journey. And not directly, but she posted on a forum that I was on that she'd spoke about a clinic in Barcelona called the Calapa Clinic. Yeah. And at that time there was no cannabis clinics in the UK, and you know, it's quite scary because you're going on a journey that you want, and you know in your gut it will help your child, but everything's against you. All the medical team are telling you, don't be crazy. This is nuts. Don't even think about it. You know, this is propaganda. This could kill your child. This could damage his growing brain. Then you've got the police that are saying this is illegal. Then you've got social work risks of them coming and taking your kids off you. But on the other side, you've got I've got two boys. My eldest is 12, he'll be 13 in November, and they are the most precious people in my life. There is nothing that compares to what you will do for your own child.
Yeah.
And, I could see day by day I was losing my youngest, and it was affecting my eldest as well. It was affecting us all.
Of course.
He could see he was losing his brother. There's only 2.5 years between them. They're super close. Although you'll probably hear them arguing in the background at some point. Now I've said that.
As brothers should.
So you've got everything against you. And so when Vera had mentioned on this forum that there was a clinic in Barcelona that you could pay to have a private consultation, they would discuss as cannabis experts what would be best for your child and what would suit. And that's what I did. Because Vera had mentioned this, I got an appointment, and that was the first appointment that I got to do with cannabis, which the doctor was lovely. He talked me through everything, and I remember at the time feeling a bit annoyed, because they said, well, this is your first time trying it, we want you to start on this product. They gave me a few to choose. The one I chose was my CBD 10%, which I bought, and they shipped it over, because the Kalapa Clinic don't actually prescribe or supply, they just advise, and then they'll tell you the safest places to go to obtain it.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, this is CBD. At this point, we'd already tried Epidiolex, and we hadn't tried Epidiolex, but we were pushing for Epidiolex and was told that we couldn't get it. But I knew that it wasn't an isolate. So when I was given the option of this CBD, I thought, oh no, this is not going to work. Actually, it was a whole plant. So even though it was my CBD, it did have the legal amount of THC in it. It was 0.2%, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And at that point, Cole was taking seizures. And after a seizure, he was having a thing called Todd paralysis, which meant that he would be kind of paralysed from initially it was like 5 or 10 minutes. And as they went on through the month, it was lasting all day. His seizures at that point were he was having 20 through the night, and he was having a couple of breakthrough seizures during the day. I started giving him the my CBD, and within a couple of days, the Todd paralysis was gone. There was no paralysis after any seizure, and his walking came back, and his seizures dropped from about 20 to maybe 12. So I knew we were on the right track. So yeah, Vera had a massive impact on my journey, as has a lot of the other parents that have gone.
Yeah, it seems that there's a lot of education from pair to pair, and a lot of trial and error happening, and a lot of relaying information then. I think a lot of the parents initially were like yourself, because of the myths and hysteria around cannabis, because of the prohibition on it, that there was a hesitancy to try anything that might have contained THC. But it seemed that in actual fact that the CBD alone, it was good. I think there's some promise from Epidiolex, but in actual fact, there's much more promising results from a full plant, and often or not actually a higher ratio of THC to CBD, showing promise there for patients. So for yourself, you had to go through this learning process as well, but it's horrible that you have to go through this, and it's would I be right in saying none of this got documented for yourself either, like Vera going through all of this, that everything was trial and error, but you weren't working with any authorities that were recording this? Your consultants, for example, they were completely hands off, I would imagine. Would I be right?
They still are.
They're still. Oh my God.
Yeah, they still are.
This is frustrating.
Cole took his last full seizure in the 1st of April 2019. He'd had one small seizure in August. I think it was the 11th in 2019. And after that, he didn't have any more seizures until the following November. And even to this day, Cole's been seizure free since last November. And any seizure that he's had since starting Bedrolloid in March 2019, any seizure he has had since the 1st of April has only lasted 5 or 10 seconds and hasn't what I would describe as going into a full seizure. Cole starts with his breathing going heavy. And then what would usually happen is his breathing would go heavy, his eyes would flicker, he would start clicking, his body would convulse, and then his body would almost contort. He's what we would describe as double jointed. You know, but his body would kind of bend in the wrong way. Since starting Bedrolloid and since he's had any breakthrough seizures from April 2019, they've only lasted 5 or 10 seconds. His breathing will go heavy and they just stop dead, and that's it. And the most he's ever had in the one day has been 2 in the one day. It's incredible. And in March 2019, Cole was, he'd lost the ability to walk and talk. He couldn't even eat a meal. It was liquidized food. We were in hospital and they told me, that's it. You need to stop your nonsense about the cannabis, and you need to go for surgery now, or you could lose him.
Jeez. And what were you trying at this point, kind of up to there? Was that the trial with the Epidiolex then at that point?
Yeah, that was us with the Epidiolex. And I kept telling them every week, he's getting worse. And they kept saying, just put it up, keep going. And I'm saying, he's having a reaction to something. Yeah. And I remember the other parents posted something online about the flavoring that's in Epidiolex. Now this was the tail end of 2018 into 2019. So at that point there was flavoring. Now Epidiolex, I don't know what they changed, but when we got Epidiolex, it was spelt with a Y. It's no longer spelt with a Y, it's spelt with an I. So, and the packaging changed. And at that point, there was some kind of flavouring in it. There was a question mark over what the flavouring was. But I truly believe that Cole had some kind of reaction to this something that was in that, because we had already tried the My CBD prior to Epidiolex and he was doing amazing. We definitely needed the THC, but at that point you could see him getting better. And then as soon as we had to take him off the My CBD, because he was given one of only 5 prescriptions available in Scotland for Epidiolex in January 2019. And it took them a few weeks to actually get the medicine to him. And by that time, it was round about Valentine's weekend. He had just, toy paralysis was fully back. The day we were going to the hospital to pick it up, he collapsed in the lift, took a seizure, and we couldn't get him to recover for nearly an hour. I've got pictures of us picking up his Epidiolex and he's in a wheelchair as I push him back to the car. And then he continued to just spiral. He never got any better. He only got worse. And I can't say that it's the Epidiolex that made him ill, but what I can say is it didn't make him any better. Yeah. Nothing moved. He just got worse.
Was that being used as it's kind of recommended with the clobazam? I can never pronounce it. Clobazam.
Yeah, Cole used to be on clobazam. They actually took Cole off clobazam prior to him going on Epidiolex, because they didn't want it to react. Yeah. Now the consultants say that you actually can use clobazam with Epidiolex. You just need to make sure you dose it properly, because if you use clobazam too high for Epidiolex, because it's got CBD in it, it will make the clobazam work better at a smaller dose. So yeah, you end up with your child quite drowsy because you're kind of overdosing them, if you like, because it's working better effective, with the CBD at a smaller dose.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that in a report. That I've looked at some of the studies there in the early days of the Epidiolex, and I was always just kind of at the time I was doing my honours degree in herbal science, and I was very much focused on cannabis and its therapeutic potentials as a medicine. And I just couldn't get over how these companies were introducing these kind of non-native compounds to the mix, and they could, as you're thinking, there's possible an interaction there from a possible flavoring that was introduced, or it could have been from maybe the refined sesame seed oil that they're using, or maybe the alcohol that they're leaving in there. And there's a few questionable things I had at the time when I was looking at Epidiolex, and but I suppose to not be too harping on about the negative, that there was the positive, and afterwards you got access to the Bedrolloids products, which is over in Holland. How did that come about? How did you get access to the Bedrolloids suite of products?
So I decided when Cole was in hospital, we were losing him every day. He was getting weaker and weaker, and I decided enough was enough. So I got his medical records and I flew to Holland, and I walked for 4 days to find a doctor that would see me. And finally I got a doctor that seen me, and he prescribed Bedrolloid. When I showed him everything that Cole had been through and everything that he tried, at this point, Cole had tried 20 different medications and nothing had worked.
Yeah.
He couldn't believe that they hadn't offered me it already.
Jeez.
Um,
And what exactly is Bedrolloid? Just so people don't know.
Bedrolloid is whole plant medical cannabis, which is it's a 9 to 1% ratio, so it's 9% CBD to 1% THC.
Yeah.
Actually, it's got 0.5% THC in it, which is 0.2 above the legal limit. So the legal limit is 0.3 and it's 0.5. So it's not that much more than the legal limit, but it's what our kids need to make the difference. There's also a second product that Cole's now on called Bedica, which is pure THC. And what happens is he gets, so now currently he's taking 1.5 mils of Bedrolloid twice a day, and he gets 0.1 mils of Bedica at night only. And that wee 0.1 of a mil of THC was enough to stop his seizures last November, and thankfully, touch wood, we've not had any since.
Excellent. Yeah, long may that continue. Like, I suppose I can I empathize an awful lot. I was lucky enough when I was born that when I was born with epilepsy, that I responded to the medicine. But in recent years, my epilepsy has actually returned, and I definitely think it's possibly stress related. But they've been trying they've been trying to get me onto some medications, but I keep telling them, look, I've been responding well with the cannabis. So I get auras before my seizures, and if I have cannabis nearby when the aura is happening, I can subdue the seizure activity, and it's quite impressive, really, how the activity responds to the cannabis when I consume it. But again, as you've kind of experienced, it's very hands off with consultants. My consultant doesn't want to talk to me. We have the medical cannabis access program here in Ireland, and I have to try all of the medicines before they'll actually entertain the idea of me being able to use cannabis, despite me actually being able to do it illegally without their assistance. But they don't want to have anything to do with it. It's very unfortunate that I'm stuck in that situation. But
in Scotland, the rule still is that they would rather a child had brain surgery before they're allowed to try cannabis. So if your child is a candidate for brain surgery, they would rather you try brain surgery first before trying the CBD product. The only CBD product that's on offer is still Bedrolloids, which is heartbreaking to me because, I suppose you shout loud, you become high profile, and people know the journey. But so many people contact me and other parents and, want to try and want to know how we got it and what route we did. And it's heartbreaking because we are no further forward other than there's a legal route to go now. So when I did it, I had to fly to Holland, get it prescribed, and smuggle it back into the country. Now, obviously, I was a police officer for 10 years, so that's why, as you were talking about earlier, all the different articles, ex-cop smuggles drugs, that was front page news for a good while, and I still get that headline. But for me, I did it with the BBC disclosure team, and they filmed us undercover doing it, and I agreed to it because, and a lot of people call me an idiot for doing it because they were like, well, what did you expect? But for me, it was like, I was in a very fortunate and unique position where I was an ex-police officer. I had never broke the law. I didn't as much as have a parking ticket. And it was like, this is the lengths that I have to go to keep my wee boy alive.
Of course.
And I thought naively that it would show the system up for how broken it is and it would then help fix it. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Here we are, 2022, and Cole's been seizure free since last November. He was in a wheelchair. He's no longer in a wheelchair. He's at taekwondo 3 times a week. He's living his best life. He's back in mainstream education, and yet his consultant from the NHS will have absolutely no conversation about cannabis oil and will not prescribe it. Will not entertain anything to do with it. In fact, his care is now split. So he has the other drug that he's on, which is phenytoin, which is a horrific drug. The NHS will only discuss anything to do with that. And if Cole ever has any seizures or any problems, they always want to increase that. Where with me, I always say, well, let's increase his cannabis, or let's put the THC up a slightly bit. And I've proved that I'm right so many times. Mm-hmm. So when Cole had some breakthrough seizures, just over a year ago, I went back to them and said, I don't want to put the phenytoin up because it's upsetting him. It's making him paranoid. It's making him nervous. He's anxious. He doesn't want to get out the house. I want to bring that back down, and I want to put his cannabis up slightly. And they refused. They won't discuss it. So I did what they told me to do, and he got worse, and he got worse, and he got worse, and his seizures came back. That's when he ended up having 2 seizures in the one day. Phenytoin actually causes seizures. If it's too high or too low, it causes seizures. So, and I'm saying to them, I don't know if Cole's seizures are because of the phenytoin or because of his epilepsy. And it's too high. I know in my gut, I know my child. And eventually I just stopped listening to them, and I said, enough's enough. So I brought it down, and I put his cannabis up with the help from his private consultant. And Cole's phenytoin was up at 1.9 mils twice a day. And he's now, 19 mils twice a day. And he's now down at 12 mils. Yeah. And, you know, I just gradually bring that down every couple of weeks. And he's still, touch wood, had no seizures. Mm-hmm. So I know it's not the phenytoin that's doing anything. Yeah. When we took the cannabis and added a wee bit of Bedica in, they were gone, they vanished overnight. Yeah, with them, they won't even say, well, listen, we can't help you with the Bedrolloid, so maybe go and speak to the private consultant. They won't. They just keep saying, no, keep putting the phenytoin up, even though they know and they can see it isn't working and it's making them worse. They don't have anything else to go on because they won't acknowledge that Bedrolloid is a medicine that is helping them.
I just can't understand why. I suppose the tunnel vision is on. I think you might have said that yourself a while ago when you were kind of in the police force and stuff like that. You would have had a tunnel vision. Is that the same, I suppose, for the medical profession, that cannabis is over here in this kind of this box for them? It's harm causing. It's no good. It's not a medicine. It's got no therapeutic potential. Because that's what we've been told since the inception of the prohibition around cannabis that came about back in the late 1930s. Like, cannabis was actively removed from the American herbal pharmacopoeia and the British herbal pharmacopoeia prior to the 1950s, thereby removing any evidence of its therapeutic uses, of its how it's grown, harvested, processed in order to be used therapeutically. So they removed all of this. And so for a long time, there's been no research done on all of this, and all of the research that was being done is on the compounds now that we're kind of dealing with. A lot of these medicines that get trialed, a lot of these single compound approaches. So there definitely is a big a break within the system at the moment, because there's a reluctance for them to even entertain the idea that cannabis has a therapeutic potential. Still to this day, 2022, here we are. It's 16 months now seizure free, is it? Or
no, so he was seizure free for seizure free for a year and a half. Then he had a couple of breakthrough seizures. Then he was seizure free again for about
since
9 months.
November.
He had 3 seizures last November, and that's him been seizure free since. So, you know, considering Cole's whole life, he'll be 10 in July, and he started taking seizures at 3 months old. And the longest we got him seizure free was 6 months post surgery. And other than that, Cole's had seizures almost every day. And now he's had hardly any, and even the ones he's having aren't proper seizures compared to what he was having.
But even to think of that, though, that like 6 months was the reward for a brain surgery, and the risks involved with a brain surgery are through the roof, versus like the best you've gotten with the cannabis has been a year and a half. And the risks there, you know, it's minimal at best. That we've got thousands of years of use of cannabis. Again, you know, it's not recorded in the medicines of Western society today. But in some of the ancient texts, you go back to the Ayurvedic texts and stuff like that over there in India, it's there. Cannabis was being used as a medicine. Even some of the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, they feature the cannabis plant and stuff like that. So it's been long regarded as a medicine. It's only within, again, as I say, since the inception of this prohibition, within this last 100, last 80 so years, we've kind of almost had an amnesia around its potential. And anybody who tries to make an effort to remind society of it, it's kind of, you face that yourself, that the stigma, you're almost looked at as a crazy person, that you want to up the cannabis and down the pharmaceutical, the fiend. It's a tough one, because where would your son be today if you didn't take those brave steps and venture off and try these things for yourself? Because like the option they were giving you was a second brain surgery. I just can't believe that.
7th birthday, I don't think he would be here today if he
Yeah.
didn't have cancer. Honestly, even his consultant that knew him since he was 3 months old sat in the hospital with his head in his hands and said, I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. They were doing intensive bloods and urine tests because they thought I'd been giving him something that I shouldn't, because I had been shouting that I wanted access to cannabis and they wouldn't give me it. And when they put him on Epidiolex and he got so poorly, they just kept saying, I've never seen anything like it. And I was saying, I know, I've been telling you, but they wouldn't listen. And then, even he said, I don't know, what do you think? And I said, I want to put him back on whole plant. Only at that point, he believed it was the my CBD that was legal, that I had got from the Kalapa clinic, but I hadn't. I had already been to get Bedrolloids from Holland. And he said, well, you can give him if you want, but we can't be involved. Basically, we'll turn a blind eye, but we won't support it. And I said, that's good enough for me. As long as you know, and Cole's safe, that I'm giving him this, and there's no risk of anything affecting it, then I'm willing to do that. And that was it. And thank God I did, because we were losing him. He was slipping away.
Yeah, well, long may the medicine continue to work as it has been up to now. But I suppose you faced a couple of bumps down on the road with the supply of it, with the whole Brexit and all of this. Where is that now? Is the supply kind of sorted now between Holland and the UK, or is that still up in the air?
No, I'm not really sure where the agreement is through Brexit, but Target Healthcare, who were the importers from Holland over to the UK, they actually watched the documentary that the BBC filmed Undercover with myself and Target are in the same town as where I live. And so they had contacted me and said, we can import that oil over here, so you don't need to risk breaking the law to access it, and we will do it at cost. Whatever you would pay over the counter in Holland is how much we will charge you. We'll cover the flights, we'll cover the license. So they did all that. It was amazing, because there was other companies that were trying to make money off us. They wanted £600 extra on top of a bottle of oil, from parents of sick children. Other importers, it was disgusting. So Target came to the rescue, and we were getting off them. And then the chief exec of Target has a lab down in London, and they now produced Bedrocan. They teamed up with Bedrocan and had people come over here and trained them up. So they use the same plant and make the same oil, but it's made in the UK now. It's made down in England, which means that Brexit won't now affect our supply, and the price is stayed the same. So we now have a definite constant supply. There's no risk of them taking it away from us, thankfully. And the last piece of the puzzle is the financial cost. That's it. Now, they either have to do the trials that they keep promising they're going to do, and they have to use Bedrocan products, because that's what 90% of people are taking, for their kids. That seems to be the best that there is. And I get that there has to be different options in the market. Of course there is. But, Bedrocan products have been used the longest on the children with epilepsy. For me, I'm fighting, because if they did trials tomorrow, they won't help Cole. They won't change anything for me, because they will find out what I already know. Cole's done his own trial. We've done our trial. He's passed with flying colours. He is the best he's ever going to be. And what annoys me is I feel like they keep going on about trials, and they're forgetting about us, the people that put the graft in, the people that have been shouting about it for the last 3 years and have paved the way for so many other parents. They need to be putting money in place for us. They need funding. We need funding put in place immediately so that we're not having to find £1,300 every month to keep Cole safe. You know, there should be a fund put in place by the Scottish Government. And obviously I live in Scotland, so I have an NHS Scotland and we have a Scottish Government.
Yeah.
We also have SIGN, who write the guidelines for Scotland. And we have, that's terrible, the Scottish Medicines Consortium, the SMC.
Yep.
So between all of those groups of people, they could make it available, through the NHS, whether it's observational trials initially, and they could definitely put a fund in place, but they keep saying no, and they're not giving me any reason. They just say they won't pay for Cole's private prescription because it's misuse of funds, and they won't prescribe it or support the prescribing of it because they don't know what damage it's doing to the growing brain. And my argument back is two things. One, financially, there was no an option. I didn't choose to go privately because I was trying to get seen quicker. You know, there was nothing left available in the NHS that could help my son. That was it. We tried everything. And second of all, they don't know what damage it's caused to his growing brain. One, because they haven't bothered to check, because he's been taking it now since 2019 and nobody's done any detailed testing on him. Yeah. And also, their other option was they were going to cut his brain in half. I know what damage that does to the growing brain.
Yeah, that's it.
So, you know, it's just, it's bureaucracy at its absolute worst. You know, it's awful. And the only people that are suffering are the families of these children.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely scandalous that this has gone on for such a long time, because I've been following stories of patients going back as far as 2012 who've been using cannabis as a medicine. And again, there's just very little being done by those with the power to do so, to make the necessary changes to get access. So we could see, you know, the benefits for those who will benefit, and for those who don't, well, there's other drugs there. It's kind of like what we already do with other medicines. It's like some drugs will work for some people, but and not for others. It's why should a patient have to go through, endure all sorts of different chemical therapies and a brain surgery before they're considered a candidate for access to a plant, an oil, an extract from a plant? It's just absolutely absurd. And then for the NHS, then the same people who are okay with chopping your child's brain up to be all of a sudden now concerned about the brain, and they're not going to fund that. They're willing to fund the surgery to chop a piece of his brain. These guys are just like hypocrites to the highest order. On one hand, they're concerned, and the other hand, like, they're actually jeopardizing the safety of your child by not actually funding it, because you're privately funding £1,300 every month yourself. At a time when you're having to be a full-time carer for, well, I suppose since he's gotten access now to cannabis, I suppose you're not necessarily a full-time carer. You're more at ease now as a mother.
I work for the trade unions. I work for Unison.
So you're working away again.
And obviously I'm running to be a local councillor. So thankfully, because of cannabis, I can actually have a working life. You know, I'm a single parent of 2 kids, and I want to earn my own money. But as you say, when you've got a disabled child, it's almost impossible. Yeah. I was fortunate that I worked for the trade union, and they were amazing with me. When Cole got really ill, they were such a support. So I was very, very fortunate. But I've had jobs, you know, I was a police officer for 10 years. I gave up my career because my son needed me and I couldn't do shifts anymore. I then went to work for a couple of charities who, again, were not very supportive. Anytime I needed off, it was a big problem. And I decided, you know, I didn't think I could ever work, because the pressure that's put on you to constantly have to phone in and say, oh, I'm not making it in today, or I'm going to be late. it's just too much stress. And then when I started with the trade union and Cole got sick again, I thought, oh, here we go. So for the fact that cannabis has worked, and it's worked so well, it didn't just give Cole his life back, it gave me mine. It allows me to work and earn money and look after my children, and it also allows my eldest son to have a bit of a breather, because he was passed from pillar to post every time we were getting out of hospital.
Of course,
Dylan was passed for here, there and everywhere, and there'd be nights where we'd be doing homework at 9 o'clock at night because I had been at the hospital all night with Cole and coming back, and you tie yourself up in knots because the emotional strain as well. You start, the parent guilt is crucial. I mean, it's horrific anytime you're not there for your kids. The parent guilt eats you up. So
we've kind of had stuff going on here ourselves as well, a few medical emergencies. I've got 3 kids myself, and I know what it's like when you're all focused on one child who's really sick, and then the other kids kind of they do feel neglected, and it is, and as a parent you do feel that, like, I really empathize with having to go through all of that. But then I think at the same time, it's just like, isn't it so wonderful that cannabis has relieved all of that? And it's again, I think it's incredibly shameful that when you think about it, like, your son Cole now is no longer requiring probably a lot of the care and services that he would have required from the NHS. Cannabis is allowing your £1,300 a month contribution is saving the NHS countless of thousands, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, because before he was speech and language, he had physiotherapy, he had a dietitian, he was getting special stuff required at home, seats, and we were going to get the house adapted. That didn't happen. Speech and language actually signed him off within a month of him taking cannabis. She was like, I don't even know why I'm here. The physiotherapist was the same. So the intensive therapy that Cole should have had, that they thought he would have needed for about 2 years after he came out of hospital, and he didn't need it any longer than a month.
Jeez, that's amazing. And they still won't fund this medicine. It's like there's evidence there right across the board. If he's not attending these services, it shows.
Everything's documented. It's not just my word.
Yeah.
I have videoed Cole from when he got sick to when he got better, and daily afterwards. It's still a standing joke in this house. If I get my phone out, Cole thinks he's getting videoed for something. He's now got his own YouTube channel.
Yeah, I was looking at that a while ago. Cole DJC, is it?
What is it? Cole DJT, because he's called David John Thompson. That's his full name. That's where that comes from.
Yeah, I subscribed a while ago anyway. So
he's some boy, and he's so full of character. And I never want to change him. I kind of laughed the other day. I'm sure you've heard of us Scots wear iron brew, and he doesn't really get fizzy juice a lot. And I gave him some iron brew, and he spoke the whole night.
Oh no!
And, will you be quiet? And and I thought, God, a couple of years ago, I was begging, I was praying to the angels, please let my son again, and now I'm telling him to shut up. So yeah.
Yeah, that iron brew alright packs a punch of I like the taste of that stuff. But I suppose you talked about it earlier. You're running to be a local councillor over there in Scotland. Is your inspiration for doing that taken from Cole, or is there other things within the community that's inspired you to kind of get up there and run for election?
For me, it's probably a bit of both. I was active in my community for over 10 years. I was raising money for kids who needed surgery that wasn't available in the UK before I even had Cole. When Dylan was only months old, I was fundraising for kids that needed surgery or whatever was available in America. So that started my kind of community journey. And then with Cole, he was released from Glasgow Sick Kids, and he was sent home to kind of recover, and he needed equipment. He needed a special chair in order to be able to sit and eat, and the hospital had provided it in Glasgow. When we left Glasgow, we came out of the Glasgow local authority into where I stay, which is covered by South Lanarkshire local authority. And it meant that there was 2 funding pools. So Glasgow Council have their own and Lanarkshire have the other. And it meant because we were leaving Glasgow sick kids and coming over to South Lanarkshire, we couldn't bring the seat with us. And Lanarkshire didn't have those seats. So it meant that Cole was released to the house needing a special chair, but couldn't have it in the house because it didn't come under the funding pot from that local authority. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So here I am, almost lost my son, fighting to keep him alive, smuggling drugs to keep him safe. And I now need to fight with the local authority for something that should pretty much be there. The other thing as well was Cole needed a wheelchair when he stopped being able to walk. Up till he was 6, he could walk. So him losing the ability to walk was something that, we never thought would happen. And I didn't realise that it took 8 weeks to get an appointment to get a wheelchair fitting. And then it was another 6 to 8 weeks after that before you could access the wheelchair. Meanwhile, we were stuck in the house. And it was only because our OT had said, the Red Cross provides loan wheelchairs for your charge. You just leave a donation if that's something that you would like to look into. And I went in and seen it. So I was involved in a bill that Jackie Bailey, who's the deputy leader for Labour in Scotland, she put that bill through, and it was successful. And it means now that there's better wheelchair access, especially for children. And also my local councillor at the time, Monique McAdams, who's a good friend of mine, she put a motion through council to make sure that there's actually now a bridge fund that means that if kids come out of the sick kids hospital and they're released to their home address and it's a different local authority, whatever's needed is bridged by a fund that helps join the 2 councils or local authorities together. And we were really active in that. And I just thought, I'm stronger now. I've been there, done it, and I've bought the t-shirt and I've came out the other end. Yeah. And it would be good to be able to put what I have, the knowledge that I've got, to practice and help other people that are in my community, and make sure that if there's something that they need or something they should have access to, that they get it, and they need somebody that's going to fight for it. So I thought, well, I'm big enough to be shouting and moaning what the governments and local authorities are not doing, so I may as well join and try and fix it from the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I really, after talking and hearing from all that you've been through, you certainly sound like you have a person who's got what it takes to be up there and to be fighting the corner for any community. Certainly if you were out there fighting for me anyways, if it was my community, I would be happy to have you out there as a representative, because it seems like you wear your heart in your sleeve anyway, as well, and you go through things like it's hard not to.
Thank you, I do. I just think that when, especially in this world, you've got to be open and honest. Mm-hmm. For me, I'm a big believer in justification. If you can justify your actions, and if you make a mistake, put your hands up and say, do you know what, I made a mistake, but here's why I did it, and I did it with the best intentions. And that's all you need. That's where everybody needs to come from. If everyone makes mistakes, but as long as they put their hands up, and unfortunately both the governments that we have at the moment don't seem to be very good at that. They seem to be trying to cover each other up and throw other people under the bus as such, and that's that, you can't be doing that.
No, definitely not. That they have to, I think in taking that one, they have to put their hands up and admit they've made a mistake around cannabis in regards to its potential as a medicine.
A huge mistake.
Yeah, massive, man. And for people like yourselves, I think there's a massive apology needed as well, because you've been through hell and back. I think if they've acted sooner, people like Cole and others, again, you've Ava, you've got so many others, you've got Murray Gray, and geez, I could think of so many kids now, and I'll only start crying if I think of them all, because I get very emotional around this. I was thinking about all of what you've gone through. And if you were just provided access to this, your lives would have been so much better. You would have been there to give the care and attention that's needed, that the kids freaking deserve from the parents when they're growing up. All of the kids, and to see your kid having seizures that could have been prevented by something so simple, something so easy as an extract from a plant. It's just crazy. So
I get angry because I've had Cole seizure free, and for the whole time that I've had him seizure free, I spend my life fighting to keep him seizure free. So I don't get to fully enjoy it, because every night, I don't think people realise how much of a full-time job it is to campaign. I spend my nights, my weekends, emailing politicians, going back and forward, taking reports from social media or any scientific evidence that's been published, and I send it over to politicians and I say, have a read at this, what do you think of that? I look at guidelines, I try and take parts of the guideline that refer to Cole and say, have you looked at this? What about this? Would this work? I'm part of the cross-party support group in Scotland and Holland for medical cannabis. We've got a meeting actually in, I think it's 2 weeks' time, the end of April, and it's chaired by Pauline McNeill and Rona Mackay, both MSPs. Rona's SNP and Pauline is Labour. And then we've got a co-chair, Oliver Mundell, who's Conservative, and Anna Ross, who is she's a drugs policy advisor. Anna was actually listed as one of I think she was number 6 in the top 20 inspirational women in cannabis or something, which is amazing. Anna's lovely. So, we meet every couple of months, and this time we've got Professor Purby coming and speaking to the MSPs about what evidence they have, and we've tried to split it into different sections, so that there is a point to the meetings, and then we take them all together and we feed it back into the Scottish Government. Also, there's going to be a debate at the Scottish Parliament. I'm just waiting to find out the date. I should hopefully find out after the Easter break, probably next week, and it'll be the first ever Scottish debate on medical cannabis in Holland, that's been set up by Cole's MSP to fight the red tape as such, and to highlight how the system's completely broken.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, I wish you all the best of luck with that. And if I could be over there, sounds like some great events that are going to be held. And I really do hope it does achieve its goal in highlighting how broken the system is, because it well and truly is. And I just don't understand how it's taken such a long time, and how as well so many patients can be getting access to something that's regarded as not a medicine and benefiting from it. Can I ask what your feelings were around the recent announcement of is it the NHS sponsored study, 5,000 patients for chronic pain? What were your thoughts when you heard that as a person out there campaigning for access for her son, who sees he's living the best life possible thanks to this medicine?
I have mixed emotions, because I would never want anyone to miss out on such a phenomenal medicine. So, and I say the same when people always say to me, what about the people getting methadone? What about the people getting that? The people getting methadone are somebody's son, somebody's dad, somebody's brother, somebody's wife, somebody's daughter. They're all somebody's family. So I wouldn't want to take away from anyone else. Yeah. I just get angry because I feel like we're the ones getting left behind. Yeah. That we've paved a way, we've highlighted it, we've brought it to the attention. The children that are taking cannabis because of epilepsy are the faces that you see at the front of most campaigns. The face of a child that struggles with epilepsy is what the papers use, is what the politicians use. And our children are not pawns in a game, and I feel like they've allowed us to pave the way, and there's now clinics opening everywhere, there's businesses opening everywhere, and now we've almost been left behind and forgotten. The forgotten children, I called us in an article that I wrote, and I feel like that's where I'm at the moment. I just feel a bit disappointed that the people who have pushed and fought for so long almost are getting forgotten, while all these other trials are starting to take place, and we're still no further forward.
Yeah, and so far to date, it's only 2 kids have successfully received NHS funding for their cannabis medicines, and that's across the whole of the UK, Scotland, England, Wales. That is absolutely ridiculous. I can't I understand that. And do you think there's a light at the end of the tunnel in all of this for you? Do you think that there's going to be a day in the not too distant future where this is going to be sorted out, or do you think that it's going to be like €1,300 a month for another few years?
I have no idea is the honest answer. I would like to think there was light at the end of the tunnel, but I did have a conversation with the Scottish Health Minister, Humza Yousaf, and also Chief Pharmaceutical Officer Alison Strath, who, by the way, is wonderful. Alison is amazing. But I did say that to them, it's not easy to continually fundraise when there is no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no end date.
Yeah.
We have been doing this since 2018 and we are no further forward. There's no trials, there's no funding, there's no a promise of anything coming up. So for us, I'm having to constantly fundraise or find money every month, but there's no end date.
And I'd imagine you're facing the same stuff in Scotland that we are in terms of inflation, fuel, groceries, everything is going up. And meanwhile, you're having to, like, did you ever find yourself wondering, it's just, like, did we have enough there for the shopping this week, or do we kind of sacrifice like Cole's medicine? Like, did you ever find yourself in that situation?
Thankfully, I haven't. Recently, a couple of months ago, we were almost running out of money, and I broke down on the cross-party support group. I don't really cry a lot. I think I did all my crying when Cole was in hospital, but I broke down, and it was anger, frustration, and stress. We were almost out of money. I was struggling to pull the money. I've spent my savings. It was getting to the stage where we were panicked, and I had to go to the consultant and say, I am almost out of money. What's the options for Cole here? And they were saying, now surgery is no longer an option because he's been seizure free for so long. But they still wouldn't prescribe Bedrolloid, and they would rather take him off Bedrolloid and put him on a different medicine that they didn't know what would happen, or they would try all the medicines he's previously tried and failed to see if they would work second time round. And just now I'm questioning the ethics around Cole's care, because I'm saying, well, if you were giving a child with epilepsy 2 anti-epileptic medicines, and Cole has a less than 1% chance of ever being seizure free with the type of epilepsy he has, and that's been confirmed by a medical professional, and I have currently got him that less than 1% is seizure free. I've got more chance of winning the lottery, and I have Cole seizure free. If one of those 2 medicines was not cannabis, would we be having a discussion about ever taking that child off the medicine? We wouldn't. No. So the ethics around Cole's care and the decisions that are getting made are completely biased towards the fact that it happens to be cannabis, because at the end of the day, it's prescribed by a medical professional. It just happens to be in the private sector. It's not in the NHS, but it's still a prescribed medicine. You can't buy it, you can't access it without a prescription. It is a prescribed medicine. So for me, the next challenge for me is looking at the ethics around Cole's care, because I don't believe that they're looking at it ethically. And
do you believe there's a case there of kind of medical malpractice, I suppose, in that regard? Jesus, yeah, I suppose we won't comment too further in case there's a pending case, so it's all we don't want to implicate the case. Because I do but I do think that there needs to be someone held to account for this, because if they were to go ahead with what you just mentioned, or go take them off the Bedrolloid, go back to these other medicines that have been proven not to work in the past, like it's a no-brainer. He's going to be going back to where he was before, most likely requiring like wheelchair and all of that stuff again, and maybe even entertaining the idea of a brain surgery again. That isn't absolutely absurd. That's where they're okay with that.
And I said, what if he gets sick and he dies, or what if he ends up back in a wheelchair? And they said, well, he recovered quickly the last time, we've just put him back on it. And I said, cannabis doesn't work like that, right? You can't just take him off it and then put him back on it and hope that the results. Cole's drug resistant. It might be that we would need to change the dose. We'd need to mess about with it. We'd need to build him back up. we would need to balance his phenytoin with the Bedrolloid. It isn't just a case of stopping one thing and then starting it again. You know, it could work, but it might not, because that's just what Cole's body does. And they know that, and they just said, you know, well, that's the option. That's it.
Horrible. Are you working with any other groups out there at the moment? I know there's groups like End Our Pain, and I believe there's another charity group that got started there recently to try to help patients in your situation who are privately funding. I can't remember the name, but off the top of my head, Karen Gray and a few others are involved in it. No, I can't think of it. I'll insert it in there later on in an edit. But they're
I'm not involved with anyone.
Okay.
It's simply because because I'm in Scotland. I know that other Scottish parents are more involved with Westminster and End Our Pain, but that's End Our Pain is Westminster focused. For me, I'm government focused, because I went to Westminster with End Our Pain, and I came home to a letter from the girl who works for End Our Pain to say that at that time it was Matt Hancock who'd promised that he would do all sorts to help us. And she said that, you know, whatever came out of it, I wouldn't be included, because I was in Scotland and under NHS Scotland, we would have to fight our own government, our own NHS. So from that point, I made the decision that I won't waste my time in Westminster anymore. I'll be up here fighting Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP to get what I need for my boy, because we have all the mechanisms in place in Scotland. It's not to say that if Westminster changed it tomorrow, we wouldn't follow suit. But for me, if I can fight someone that's 40 minutes along the road, then that's what I'll be doing, rather than going away down to Westminster. So I just kind of do my own things. I'm sure you're fully aware, being in the cannabis community, that there's a lot of politics within politics in the cannabis community, and I try to stay out of it as much as possible. So I think that, you know, as I'll help anyone that contacts me as much as I can, but I tried fighting for other people. It didn't really work out. There was too much nonsense going on. So I took a step back, and I just fight for Cole now, and hope that if we get change, it changes for everybody.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that one. Anyway, no, it's just been very it's been really interesting to be able to hear everything you've gone through. But I suppose it's heartbreaking as well to hear that you know we're not anywhere really much closer to, compared to like where we were going back a couple of years ago. I know all of these businesses and services are up and everything. That's excellent, you would think, but when you're having to pay for £1,300, like how many parents out there could actually even afford that? Really, like there's not too many in this day and age. Like you're in a lucky situation. We're able to go out and you have friends from family, and you're able to fundraise. I've seen a really cool one, and you done some coal walking, fire walking, and you were able to raise a 6 month enough for 6 months supply of medicine. But when I seen that, I was just thinking, isn't it absurd that you're allowed to go walk on coals, but it's legal to have cannabis?
I know. It's crazy.
I just couldn't get over that. But Lisa, I look forward to following your story. Unless you have anything else to add in there, I definitely would suggest that anybody over there in your jurisdiction give you a vote anyway, because you're certainly after impressing me here this evening.
Thank you so much.
Where can people find out more about your campaign? You're running with the Labour Party over there in Scotland, in Kilbride, is that the name of the place?
Yeah, it's East Kilbride. I'm running to stand in the East Kilbride Central South Ward, which covers the Westwood and the Murray. Anyone that's looking to find out more, if they go on to Lisa Quarrell EK, I've got a political page set up, and excellent. I've also got a page for Cole on Facebook that's Cole's campaign. Yeah. So whatever campaign that you're wanting to follow, you'll see it. And there's usually a crossover. I've tried not to put a lot of Cole stuff on my political page, because I want to keep it separate, because there's a lot of people that support Cole's campaign that maybe don't support the political views, which is fine. You know, I have my own reasons, and that's okay. And I don't want to chase people away from Cole's campaign because we don't share the same political views. But there is crossover, there is posts that you can share. So you'll see things on Cole's page, and it will take you direct to the East Kilbride page.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think we should all be able to put our differences aside to be able to fight for a patient's access to a medicine, like whatever your political views are. It's just like, let's put all that stuff aside. It doesn't really matter. And as well, for people who want to follow an up and coming YouTube star, it's Cole DJT as well, if they want to follow that up and coming star.
Yes, my wee superstar.
Excellent.
Definitely.
Well, Lisa, I do look forward to seeing more from you, and I really do hope the next time that we get to speak, it'll be a counsellor, Lisa Quarrell.
I don't know if I would ever get used to that, but yeah, that's that. I'm really hoping. Three weeks today is the vote, so
3 weeks.
So
today.
another 3 weeks.
Yeah, I've ran myself in an election over here. I never thought I would see myself doing it, but I ran for government in Ireland around the issue of cannabis reform because of my own fight on that one. But I never thought I would see myself running for government. But it was quite an experience, and I'd imagine this is your first time out as well.
My first time, and it's quite an experience as well. I can tell you that much.
Enjoy it. It's unique. Enjoy it. Well, best of luck anyway, Lisa, and thanks again for your time this evening. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much. I'll speak to you soon.
Bye, Lisa. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And there you go, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed that conversation with Lisa Quarrell. Again, a big thanks to Lisa for coming and taking time out of her day to share with us her journey as a medical cannabis campaigner. If you'd like to keep up to date on further stories there from Cole and Lisa, you can find them over on Facebook and TikTok under the name Cole's Campaign. And you can also find videos from Cole over on his YouTube channel on Cole DJT. So get over there, give him a like, follow, subscribe, and all of that fun stuff as well. And a big thanks to everybody out there listening. Really appreciate your support, guys, of the show. And I'll be back again in a not too distant future with more interviews and guests. So until then, guys, stay blessed, keep it lit. Much love. Peace.